Imagine for a second that you spend like an entire year, 82 grueling games, perfectly tuning a $1 million Formula One race car.
Right, highly specialized.
Exactly. It's gorgeous, you know.
Uh-huh.
It relies on pristine timing, a perfectly paved track, flawless weather to hit top speed. And then the day the championship actually starts, someone tells you the race is taking place in a literal mud pit.
Just a total mess.
Yeah, that is the reality of the NBA playoffs right now. Welcome to another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to unpack an absolutely chaotic, script-flipping week of playoff basketball for you. We've got a stack of fresh post-game pressers, sports analysis, and insider notes.
And the narratives are just completely upside down this week.
Oh, totally. We're
Yeah.
looking at heavily favored juggernauts just stalling out in the mud,
Hmm.
completely unexpected underdogs, surging sweeps, and the crowning of a new Rookie of the Year.
It's been a wild ride.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with a series that has completely broken my brain.
You're talking about the Detroit Pistons and the Orlando Magic, right?
I am. I mean, the Pistons won 60 games this year. 60. They were the F1 car. But right now, the 8th-seeded Orlando Magic have a commanding 3-1 series lead over them.
Which nobody saw coming.
Nobody. Game 4 was a 94-88 Orlando victory, and to say it was an ugly game, well, that feels like an insult to ugly games.
It really does.
The Magic shot 32.6% from the field. I was watching the tape, and they were missing wide-open layups, clanking threes, yet they still won. How does a team shoot that poorly and beat a 60-win behemoth?
Well, because they completely shattered Detroit's pristine timing. Like you said, in the regular season, the Pistons run these beautiful, intricate off-ball screens.
Poetry in motion normally.
Right. But the playoffs are a dirt track. The referees swallow their whistles. Suddenly, defenders are allowed to hold you a little bit, bump you off your spot, fight through screens with real physicality.
The whistle changes completely.
Exactly. The Magic decided early on they weren't going to try to outscore Detroit. They were just going to drag them down into the mud.
It was a literal rock fight. I was looking at the clutch time stats, and this blew my mind. In the final 4 minutes and 50 seconds of Game 4, these two teams combined to shoot 2 for 18 from the floor.
Wow. 2 baskets in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That is exhausting, physical, trench warfare basketball right there.
Which really brings me to my big question here. I'm watching Cade Cunningham, Detroit superstar, and he just looks exhausted. He had 8 turnovers in Game 4 alone. So is this a failure of Cade shrinking under the playoff lights? Or is this a fundamental failure of how this roster was built around him?
What's fascinating here is that it's entirely a front office failure.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Look, Detroit stood pat at the trade deadline. Everyone watching knew they desperately needed secondary shot creators.
Guys who can actually handle the ball.
Yeah, guys who can put the ball on the floor, collapse a defense, and make a decision when the primary play breaks down. Because they don't have that, Orlando is employing a very simple, brutal defensive strategy.
Which is what?
They are just sending 2 bodies at Cade Cunningham the second he crosses half court.
They're essentially saying, like, we know nobody else on this roster can dribble under pressure.
Precisely. They are trapping him. And when you are the only release valve on the floor, the defense dictates your reality. Cade is getting swarmed, he's forced to pick up his dribble, and the spacing completely dies.
It's painful to watch.
It is. And to make it worse, Duren, Detroit's big man who dominated the regular season, is getting completely neutralized by the physicality. He relies on lob passes and a clean paint, but Orlando has just packed the paint with bodies.
But which honestly set the stage for the most absurd storyline of the playoffs. Jamal Cain.
Oh man, Jamal Cain.
Right. For anyone who doesn't follow the transaction wire religiously, this is a guy who was on a 2-way contract for Orlando for most of the year.
Literally shuttling back and forth between the G League and the NBA.
Exactly. And he steps onto a playoff floor, drops 8 points, grabs 9 rebounds, and gets the game-tying putback.
And it wasn't just a putback. He delivered a monstrous poster dunk right on Duren's head.
It completely demoralized the Pistons bench. You could visibly see their shoulders drop. And the wildest part is that Orlando orchestrated this entire mud fight without Franz Wagner.
Yeah, he left the game in the 4th quarter with calf tightness.
Right. It's just a testament to the fact that when a team loses its offensive identity, sheer will and defensive aggression can absolutely steal a series.
But that's the dividing line in the NBA, right? When the physical pressure turns up, some teams crumble. But true championship DNA actually reacts differently. They use that pressure against the defense.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, think about how a different superstar handles that exact same defensive desperation.
That perfectly describes what we just saw from the Denver Nuggets.
Exactly.
They were staring down the barrel of elimination against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they didn't panic. They stayed alive. They forced a Game 6 with a 125-113 win.
Now you have to look at the structural mechanics of why Minnesota lost this game. They were severely shorthanded.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards is out with a knee injury.
Right, and Dante DiVincenzo has a torn Achilles.
Which meant their entire backcourt, like their primary ball handling, was just gone.
Gone. And when you remove the primary ball handlers from an offense, you have to ask guys to play outside of their natural roles. Suddenly, you've got Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels trying to initiate the offense at the top of the key.
Oh, that's rough.
It is a disaster waiting to happen. They aren't used to reading the second layer of the defense. They stare down their passes. They pick up their dribbles too early.
And the result was 25 turnovers for Minnesota. 25. Denver's defense just jumped the passing lanes all night because every pass was telegraphed.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The contrast. We just talked about Cade Cunningham panicking under pressure. But when the Timberwolves sent double teams at Nikola Jokic to try and force a comeback, he just, stopped.
He plays the game in slow motion.
Exactly. He ended up with 27 points, 12 rebounds, and 16 assists. He didn't force 40 shots to try and play hero ball.
No, he never does.
He just used his eyes to move the defenders out of position. But the crazy thing is, Jokic wasn't even the most surprising part of the night. We have to talk about Cam Johnson, who set the tone physically with 18 points, but even more importantly, Spencer Jones.
The Spencer Jones game will be studied.
I mean, he drops 20 points, hits 4 of his 5 threes, and plays absolute menace defense with 3 blocks and 3 steals.
Yeah.
And he did all of that shooting 75% from the field. Can you explain to me how a role player manages to completely take over an elimination game like that?
It comes down to exploiting the chaos we just talked about. Because Minnesota had no real point guards, their offensive spacing was a mess. Spencer Jones realized early on that Minnesota's backup handlers were making lazy, looping passes.
So he adjusted.
Right. Instead of just playing standard man-to-man defense, Jones started playing free safety. He abandoned his man, gambled on the passing lanes, and it paid off with those steals.
That's incredibly smart.
And on the offensive end, Jokic's gravity drew all the attention, leaving Jones wide open in the corners. He just calmly knocked down the shots.
And in doing so, he joined Sean Marion and Hakeem Olajuwon as the only players in NBA playoff history to record 20 points, 3 blocks, and 3 steals while shooting 75% or better in a playoff game.
That is elite company.
Insane company. It just goes to show when a star like Jokic meets the moment and trusts the system, it elevates the entire roster.
But, Denver is the exception. When you look across the league, when an offense gets bogged down and the star player doesn't have that supreme slow-motion processing speed, things get ugly very fast.
Yeah, I feel like you're pointing a massive spotlight directly at the Phoenix Suns with that comment.
I absolutely am.
Because their season just ended in a devastating first-round sweep against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder won Game 4, 131-122. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was just a steady 31 points. And OKC's role players, guys like Alex Caruso and A.J. Mitchell, just hit dagger after dagger.
It was a surgical dismantling. But let's break down exactly what went wrong for Phoenix, specifically with Devin Booker.
Yeah, because I am looking at the box score, and I honestly do not get it. How does a scorer as historically elite as Devin Booker have 4 turnovers in the first quarter alone and 0 field goals in the first half of a win-or-go-home game?
It's baffling on paper.
Does he just forget how to play basketball?
It's not that he forgets. It's that the Thunder defense completely short-circuited his processing. OKC runs a very specific defensive scheme against isolation scorers. They don't just double-team randomly.
Right.
They blitz the pick and roll. The second Booker uses a screen, 2 defenders aggressively sprint at him, completely cutting off the middle of the floor and forcing him toward the sideline.
So they essentially use the sideline as a third defender.
Exactly. And to beat a blitz, a star guard has to do one of 2 things. Either make a lightning-fast pass over the top to the roll man, or keep his dribble alive and retreat to pull the defenders out.
And Booker didn't do either.
No, he panicked. He picked up his dribble immediately and got trapped. And because Phoenix's roster is incredibly top-heavy, the guys waiting for his passes weren't dynamic enough to make OKC pay for doubling Booker.
Which brings up a stat that I need you to translate for the casual fan listening to this. Jalen Green, Booker's teammate, finished this series as a -42.
Oof.
What does that actually mean on the basketball court?
So plus minus is a metric that tracks the score of the game while a specific player is on the floor. So a -42 means that during the minutes Jalen Green was actually playing in this four-game series, the Phoenix Suns were outscored by a total of 42 points.
Ouch. That is horrific.
It means he was a structural liability, he wasn't defending well, and his offensive spacing just wasn't threatening the Thunder at all.
It really makes you rethink the whole regular season. Phoenix won 48 games. On paper, everyone called that a success. But if you are a Suns fan watching your team get swept out of the first round because your stars completely lose their identity under pressure, you have to ask, what is the point of a top-heavy 48-win season?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's an illusion. The Suns are the ultimate cautionary tale of the modern NBA right now.
How so?
Well, they banked everything on acquiring highly paid, flawed individual talent, assuming that star power would overcome systemic roster issues. Oklahoma City proved the exact opposite.
Right, OKC is so deep.
OKC is a well-oiled, cohesive machine. They drafted well, developed their guys, and built a system where every player, from the MVP candidate to the eighth man on the bench, knows exactly how to read a blitz defense and punish it.
And speaking of identifying talent through the draft, we just got some massive news. The league has officially crowned the Rookie of the Year.
Yes, Cooper Flagg.
The 19-year-old phenom.
Yeah.
He takes it home over VJ Edgecombe and Con Knippel.
A well-deserved win.
Oh, totally. And look, Knippel had a great shooting year, but Flagg was playing a different sport. He averaged 21 points per game.
Incredible numbers for a teenager.
Yeah, the only other rookies to hit that mark recently are Luka Doncic and Victor Wembanyama. But there's another stat that really jumped out from the source material. Flagg posted 3.8 win shares. Again, for someone just tuning into the advanced stats era, what does a win share actually measure? And that's just a fancy way of saying he carried a bad team.
It's a bit more nuanced than that. Win shares is an advanced metric that tries to calculate exactly how many wins a specific player is responsible for based on their individual offensive and defensive efficiency relative to the rest of the league.
So it filters out empty stats.
Exactly. It proves that Flagg wasn't just a bad team, good stats guy taking 30 shots a night. He was highly efficient. He was directly contributing to winning basketball sequences, getting stops, making the right passes, scoring efficiently.
So what does this all mean? Jason Kidd had a quote about Flagg earlier this year that I just can't stop thinking about. He said, "Other rookies are pieces of a puzzle. Cooper Flagg is the puzzle."
That is the perfect way to describe a generational talent. He has gravity. When he steps on the court, even without the ball, opposing defenses shift toward him. They spent the entire season centering their game plans around a teenager.
But if you're a fan of the Dallas Mavericks, or whichever team ends up building around him for the next decade, you should be looking at Detroit and Cade Cunningham and feeling absolutely terrified right now.
You should be taking frantic notes. You cannot draft a Cooper Flagg, hand him the keys, and say, good luck.
Right. You need infrastructure.
Yes. If his front office isolates him against playoff-level defenses without help, he will be trapped in the mud just like Cade. To unlock Flagg's long-term potential, you have to surround him with 2 or 3 secondary playmakers.
Who comes to mind?
I'm talking about guys in the mold of a Kobe White or an Ayo Dosunmu. Players who can attack a closeout, dribble into the paint, and make a kick-out pass. If you don't relieve the pressure, you are setting your generational puzzle up to fail.
Yeah, the pressure on these 19 and 20-year-old kids to just instantly carry an entire franchise on their backs is insane. Flagg is feeling it. Cade is buckling under it. But down in Houston, we just watched a remarkably young core face the most intense pressure imaginable.
The Rockets.
Yes. They were facing an elimination game against the Los Angeles Lakers, down 3-0 in the series, and they were playing without their veteran anchor, Kevin Durant, who is out with a bone bruise.
And you know what? They didn't blink.
They really didn't.
Yeah.
They won Game 4, 115-96, to avoid the sweep, and the turning point was this completely absurd 34-8 run in the third quarter.
Just a massive momentum shift.
Huge. But what I want to zero in on is how they stopped LeBron James. They held him to 2 field goals on 9 shots and forced 8 turnovers. How does a group of 22-year-olds defensively suffocate one of the greatest minds in basketball history?
But using incredible defensive discipline and understanding his tendencies, the Rockets deployed what's called an ice coverage against LeBron in the pick and roll.
Okay, break that down for us.
Instead of letting him use the screen to get to the middle of the floor where he can survey the whole court and pick you apart, the young Rockets offenders aggressively jumped above the screen. They forced him toward the sideline and specifically made him go left, away from his dominant hand.
So they took away his vision and his preferred angles.
Exactly. And when he tried to force passes back to the middle, Houston's young, athletic wings were already rotating and jumping those lanes. It was brilliant execution.
Really impressive.
But it also takes an emotional spark to execute that perfectly, and that started before the game even ticked off.
Right. Alperen Sengun, who is emerging as such a massive voice for this team, gave this impassioned pregame speech in the locker room. He demanded that they protect their home floor.
And he backed it up.
He did. He ended it with the 19 points, but it felt like his energy infected everyone. Emin Thompson was just punishing the Lakers, scoring 23 points.
Thompson was so smart out there. He recognized that the Lakers' big men were playing drop coverage, meaning they were backing up into the paint to protect the rim.
Yeah, giving him space.
So Thompson just calmly stepped into the open mid-range area and hit floater after floater. Lethal touch.
And we have to talk about the highlight of the night. Reed Shepherd.
Oh, the crossover.
Yes. He's matched up on LeBron James on the perimeter. He hits him with a lethal crossover that completely collapses the Lakers' defense. They all panic and swarm the paint, and Shepherd, who finished with 17 points himself, just casually threads a beautiful needle pass to Sengun for a wide-open assist at the rim.
It just showed that the game is slowing down for these young guys. They had incredible poise.
But I have to ask, why did the Lakers look so helpless during that third-quarter run? I mean, they were up 3-0 in the series. They had the momentum. Did they just stop caring?
No, it wasn't a lack of effort. It was a combination of physical attrition and simple math. You have to look at the evolution of the NBA right now. The Lakers rely on an older, veteran-heavy roster.
Yeah, lots of miles on those legs.
Exactly. Playing 40 minutes a night against a rotation of endless, sprinting 22-year-olds finally caught up to them. When your legs go, your jump shot goes. Their shooting variants crashed back to earth.
And Houston just capitalized on it.
Right. Houston saw that exhaustion, pushed the pace in transition, and simply ran the Lakers out of the gym.
And they did it with Kevin Durant cheering from the bench in street clothes. It really makes you wonder. These young Rockets prove they are a cohesive, dangerous unit without needing a veteran superstar to bail them out, which feels like it points to a massive shift in how the league operates.
It absolutely does. I want you to think about this as a final thought to ponder. Between the Thunder methodically sweeping the top-heavy Suns, the young Rockets physically overwhelming the veteran Lakers, the ascendance of Cooper Flagg, and 60-win Pistons collapsing because they have no depth, are we witnessing the official death of the veteran super team era?
Wow. Because for the last decade, the blueprint was so obvious. You jam 3 highly paid 30-something stars onto a roster, fill out the rest of the bench with minimum contract guys, and you win a championship.
But the new collective bargaining agreement, combined with the sheer exhausting pace of the modern game, has broken that blueprint. You can no longer afford to sacrifice your depth for top-heavy talent.
The math just doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't. It is physically impossible for 3 aging stars to survive a 7-game series against a relentless, deep roster of young athletes. Elite depth, suffocating defense, and highly versatile two-way young players are the new absolute currency of the NBA. If you rely on the old super team model, you are going to get dragged into the mud and exposed.
So the spreadsheet isn't just broken, it's being entirely rewritten by a younger factor generation. That is a brilliant way to look at it, and something every front office should be terrified of right now. Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Spotify, please leave 5-star review. It will help the channel grow. Until next time, please check our previous episodes.